Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage. Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage. And someone will say his career can never be saved. Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage.
Welcome to Just Nicolas Cage, where I very slowly work my way through Nicolas Cage's filmography. And right now, everybody is buzzing about the new Nicolas Cage movie, Longlegs, that's marketed as the scariest movie of the decade. So obviously today I'm talking about the 2006 animated fantasy comedy, The Ant Bully. In The Ant Bully, a kid named Lucas has been getting bullied and he takes out his aggression on an anthill. In retaliation, a wizard ant voiced by Nicolas Cage makes a magic potion that shrinks Lucas down to ant size to atone for his crimes against the ants. The Ant Queen sentences him to work alongside the ants in the colony, and along the way he makes a few ant friends and learns a few ant lessons. I think some of my younger audience won't be aware of this, but for decades there's been this mass divide in society, particularly in America, based on these separate, warring, opposing cultures and ideologies. And this divide has caused a lot of controversy and discourse over the years. And of course these two groups are represented by red and blue imagery respectively. What? No, I'm not talking about Republicans versus Democrats. What? Come on, I'm not talking about the Bloods and the Crips. I'm obviously talking about Bugs Life versus ants. When I grew up, you were either one side or the other. I was always a Bugs Life boy, but I kinda get the appeal of ants too. Really, it was just one of those weird things where coincidentally two movies with the same subject matter come out in the same year. But apparently the world demanded another ant movie, which was released 8 years later. To be fair, story-wise, The Ant Bully is completely different from Bugs Life and Ants. Neither of them have a prominent human character in the story, and Bugs Life was kind of a Seven Samurai scenario. And Ants is kind of like the Red Badge of Courage crossed with Starship Troopers crossed with Woody Allen. Whereas I've seen The Ant Bully compared to The Incredible Shrinking Man and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But to me the comparison that comes to mind is that episode of Dexter's Lab, where Dexter shrinks himself in Dee Dee so she can understand the workings of an ant colony. And Dee Dee ends up learning that ants are amazing creatures, and Dexter learns that ants are a bunch of assholes. So the way the movie came about was Tom Hanks was reading the 1999 children's book The Ant Bully by John Nichols to his son, and Tom Hanks thought it would make for a great film. So he relayed the idea to creator of Jimmy Neutron, John A. Davis, who ended up writing and directing a movie adaptation with Tom Hanks as producer. By the way, when I first read that Tom Hanks used to read The Ant Bully as a bedtime story to his son, I fully pictured a teenage Chet Hanks going, "God damn it, Daddy, this is a good-ass book." But no, it was actually his younger son Truman Hanks he read it to. So here on this channel, I like to do my due diligence, and I usually read the book whenever I'm reviewing a Nicolas Cage film that was adapted from a book. In the past, I've discussed Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean, so I figured, why discriminate? And also it's like a 30-page picture book, so I decided to do something for the first time on this channel. So grab a nice snack and get yourself comfy in your chair because it's story time with George! Lucas wore funny glasses and a strange hat. Some kids thought he was weird. Sid, the neighborhood bully, was especially mean to him. I don't want to blame the victim, but dressing up as Where's Wally probably wasn't helping this kid's popularity. So Lucas bullied the ants, but the ants didn't like to get wet, and soon they had enough. With great skill and teamwork, they stuffed Lucas's large body in their ant hole and forced him into the Queen's chamber. "So, you're the one who always floods my colony. Don't you realize how hard we work to build what you destroy?" said the Queen. I'm not sure how they managed to fit a kid down an ant hole. And why is the Queen almost half the size of the kid's head before he's even been shrunk? I do like how the Queen is smoking though. You don't often see that in a children's story. The Queen took his silence as an insult and said to the ant wizard, "Shrink the boy and put him on trial." By the way, that cross-eyed ant wizard is played by Nicolas Cage in the movie because of course he is. "Guilty," said the judge. Lucas was sentenced to hard labor with the ants, gathering food, defending the ant colony against wasps and spiders, but the worst part was attending to the Queen. By the way, I love that the Queen has 6 pairs of slippers. That's a really cute detail. The Queen was pleased and told Lucas that she would set him free if he passes one last test, to go home and bring her a jelly bean. "But I'll need help. We ants always work together," Lucas pleaded. The Queen smiled and said, "Then take Speedy and Renee with you." As they waited for the cover of night, the two ants had many questions for their new friend. "What's it like being giant?" said Speedy. "Were you the biggest giant?" asked Renee. "I was no giant," replied Lucas. "Not compared with Sid the bully. He was always spraying me with the hose." "Oh, like you did to us?" replied Speedy and Renee together. Damn kid, they got you there. When the lights went off in the house, they quietly snuck into the kitchen to find the jelly beans. But as they were about to make off with their prize, the lights came on and a loud voice filled the room. "And ants! Lucas's father yelled. No, said Lucas, and he jumped on his father's face so Speedy and Renee could escape. Back at the colony, the Queen was sad. Speedy and Renee had returned, but not Lucas. Then, to her delight, Lucas arrived. I feel like we missed a big step between Lucas jumping on his dad's glasses right in front of his eye and him getting away. Like, did his dad not recognize his son and stop him from getting away? Well, anyway, the Queen said, Young man, you have learned the ways of the ants well. Your courage will be rewarded. And she told the ant wizard to use the growth potion on him. The wizard put the potion in Lucas's ear and he fell asleep. The ants put him outside on the grass, and the next morning Lucas woke up to an alarming sight. It was Sid, the bully, but the ants had seen him first. And I can only assume that Lucas leaves Sid for the ants, and the ants end up eating him and devouring his human flesh in penance for his crimes. The end. This is a decent little children's book. I probably would have been into this when I was a kid. And there's some decent life lessons in there about how sometimes you need to see things from a different perspective. Literally in this case. Well, that's all well and good, but how do you turn a short children's picture book into a feature-length film? Well, the core story is still in the movie, but the movie obviously had to add some subplots and new characters and flesh things out. In the movie, we see Lucas's family a bit more. His parents are away on holiday, but his sister and grandma are still home. There's a subplot with the grandmother who believes in aliens and conspiracies. I really think this part could have been cut out entirely. It doesn't add much at all. We also get to know way more about the individual ant characters, and some of them are even given arcs. In the book, it was just the Queen and a couple one-dimensional ant characters like Speedy and Renee, who basically have no personality. But probably the biggest addition is the Exterminator character, who serves as the antagonist of the story. Get it? Antagonist? I'll go into further detail about the characters later, but on the topic of the story, the central theme about the cycle of bullying is still a big part of the movie.
What are you gonna do about it, huh? Nothing, because I'm big and you're small.
What you gonna do about it, ants? Nothing, because I'm big and you're small.
It's pretty on the nose, but it's a children's film, sure. I do like at the end you actually see the kid sticking up for himself against the bully, unlike in the book where the ants take care of the bully for him abruptly at the end. But the message does feel a little bit messy. Lucas gets the other kids to stand up to the bully and they chase him and probably beat him up. Isn't that kind of teaching kids that revenge and aggression is the best policy, as opposed to, resolving things peacefully? Another big message in the movie is teamwork. There's a scene where the human kid learns from Nicolas Cage that the every man for himself approach in society isn't as effective as working together for the greatness of the colony, which I think was also a belief shared by Karl Marx. Maybe Karl Marx was shrunk by ants as a kid and that inspired him to write Das Kapital. I think that the comedy in this film is its weakest point in my opinion. There's pee-pee jokes, there's poo-poo jokes, the grandma does a fart, the kid does a burp, the Julia Roberts ant sees a little boy's penis.
Are you male or female? And how do you tell the difference? I mean, is that how?
I did not care for any of that stuff. Outside of Nicolas Cage's character's mannerisms, the only part I laughed out loud at was this part.
Always with the negative with you. Why can't you be more, hey, Lenny! This is what I'm talking about. Lenny always has a smile on his face.
That's pretty goddamn dark for a kid film, but it got a chuckle out of me. So the animation studio behind this film was DNA Productions, best known for the Jimmy Neutron film and the Jimmy Neutron TV show. But after the Ant Bully flopped at the box office, the company collapsed. So essentially this movie kills Jimmy Neutron. But in terms of the animation, the visuals are pretty good for 2006 for the most part. There's some impressive set pieces, they do some cool things with the lighting, and the action is legitimately kinda epic at times. You really feel the peril that these ants go through, especially when the Exterminator does his thing and it feels like something out of a disaster movie. I also really like the design of the ants in this movie. In the book they just look like standard ants. They're not really anthropomorphized and they all kind of look the same. Outside of like the Queen having a crown and a robe and the wizard being multicolored with a Merlin hat and the judge and the cop. But honestly I think the one place that this movie surpasses Bug's Life and Ants is in the character models of the ants. I never really liked how in Bug's Life they walked on 2 feet. In the Ant Bully they look a bit more like the ants from Ants, in that they're red and not bipedal. But the faces of the characters in Ants were always kind of janky looking to me. But in the Ant Bully, they're much more visually pleasing and expressive. There's a lot of emotion on their faces. I like that the film took a tribal presentation to the characters and their culture. I think that helped set it apart from the other Ant films. And I also enjoyed the brief glimpses we get into the different chambers of the colony, and there's a nice bit of world building. I especially like how the Queen looks. In Bug's Life and Ants, she's just like an elderly looking ant. But here she's like giant and majestic and almost ethereal. I know if I was an ant, I would bend all 6 knees for her.
This better not awaken anything in me.
But in stark contrast to how the ants look, the character design for the human characters are mostly ugly and generally unpleasant to look at. Also, is that the Chick-fil-A girl from that meme? To be fair, the human characters in the book were pretty hideous too, and even the bully's dog looks like a Pokemon gone wrong. I don't know if the movie made the ants look so pretty and the human characters look like ugly monsters intentionally, as like a metaphor for the ants having more compassion and humanity than the humans. Or maybe they just spent all the money and the effort on the ants, I don't know. So let's delve into the cast and the characters. Lucas is the protagonist, the titular ant bully. Fun fact, he's actually voiced by the kid who voiced Aang in The Last Airbender. As a character, Lucas is fine, I guess. He's serviceable and he drives the story along, but he's probably the least interesting character in the film. Much more interesting is the ant wizard voiced by Nicolas Cage. This is Nicolas Cage's second time appearing in an animated film after his underwhelming performance in Christmas Carol the movie. Here his performance is a lot more enthusiastic, and I like that you actually get a few Cageisms.
Oh, but the potion is supposed to change color. It's not changing color. It's not changing color. I call upon the elements, wind, rain, etc. Transform my potion and collect heal. Collect heal, collect heal, collect, clack.
It's a fun performance. Like I said, he's a wizard, and in the book the extent of that is that he has a pointy hat and a magic potion, and that's literally all you see of him. But in the movie I like that we saw a bit of its magic process. He collects firestones, then calls upon the elements. I would have liked to have known how he got into the magic business. There's a deleted scene where you see a flashback of him as a younger ant with his wizard master. Then an exterminator strikes and everybody except him dies. I kind of wish they kept that in. But I do like the arc he has in the film. And I like the symbiotic relationship that he had with Lucas, where he teaches him life lessons but also realizes the error of his ways through him. Like the realization that they've both been acting without thinking about the consequences. His character's romantic partner in the movie is Hova, voiced by Julia Roberts. Wait, if his partner is Hova, then does that make Nicolas Cage Beyonce? You know, nothing against Julia Roberts, but she's not somebody that would usually scream voice acting talent to me, if you know what I mean. But she's good in this. Her character's really sweet and kind, and I found her really likable. I like the way that she interacted with Lucas. She's like a mother figure for him. I also bought into her relationship with Nick Cage's character. He's tightly wound and easily agitated, and she's understanding and there to cheer him up. When they weren't arguing with each other, I thought they had great chemistry. And I actually think I liked her character more than Nicolas Cage's. And I also just kind of like looking at her face. Is that weird to say? I like how her face looks. She's very pretty and I need to stop simping over these goddamn ants. Bruce Campbell is in this movie too, and he's pretty entertaining as a cocky, perverted ant. I also like that even in ant form, Bruce Campbell still has a distinctive chin. Ricardo Montalban also plays an ant in his last ever film role, but unfortunately he's pretty underused. This movie really made me wish that we could have seen Nicolas Cage, Ricardo Montalban, Paul Giamatti, and Bruce Campbell all in a live-action film together. Wouldn't that cast make for an awesome B-movie? But instead we got an ant movie. Speaking of Paul Giamatti, he plays the exterminator villain character I talked about earlier. And Giamatti is pretty good here. He's having a blast in the role.
Yes, sir, a very mature decision. Enjoy your world that's entirely bug-free. Just sign right here and leave the killing to me.
There's a video I found where this guy critiques the morality that the ant bully presents. And I agree with some of the points the guy makes about how that the way the bully and the exterminator are dealt with kind of clashes with the whole message of the movie, which I kind of touched on earlier. But where I disagree with him is that he also argues that the exterminator isn't evil, and that he's just a guy doing his job and, you know, he's paid to get rid of ants, and ants can be a nuisance. But the exterminator in this movie is an over-the-top unlikable asshole who coerces a child into signing a contract and also publicly mocks him. There's even a deleted scene where he pulls the wings off a fly to let you know that he's not just doing this to get paid. He's also sadistic and, dare I say, evil. I think the purpose of the character in the film is to serve as a cautionary tale of what Lucas could become if he isn't put in check. The exterminator even says that he was Lucas's age when he flooded his first anthill. That being said, I still don't think he quite deserved the punishment he got at the end, where Nicolas Cage's potion transforms him into some sort of deformed mutant living Goomba from the Mario games. So overall, The Ant Bully is the third best animated ant movie I've ever seen. The movie is fine, the animation is pretty good, it moves by at a fairly rapid pace, and I enjoyed a lot of the supporting characters, but it's also nothing special. The writing is fairly mediocre, the story is pretty simple, it's predictable, and I doubt I'll be thinking about it much in the long run. I don't particularly recommend it, but I also don't see anything wrong with showing it to a kid. The kid might end up becoming a communist with a fetish for ants, but still. So the next movie Nicolas Cage was in was World Trade Center. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching.